Voters are heading to the polls in India today with nearly 900 million voters across the country. India is the world's largest democracy. The election will go through 7 phases with results announced on May 23rd. Joining us now from Washington is Tim Romer. He's America's former ambassador to India and the current co-chair of Issue One, a nonprofit group which seeks to reduce the role of money in politics. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador.
My pleasure. I look forward to talking to you about the largest democracy in the world going through an election.
So let's talk about that. All eyes are on the race between the current Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, and his main challenger, Rahul Gandhi. What has characterized the Modi era in your mind, and what is Gandhi offering instead?
Well, that's a key question. Certainly this election coming up where 900 million people are going to be eligible to vote, and by their constitution and election law, you shouldn't have to go more than 1.5 miles to get to a voting machine. So you can imagine logistically the challenge of getting these voting machines to all these tens of millions of people within a 5-week period. The election between Mr. Modi, who was elected in 2014, and the opposition party is basically about 3 things. One, it's about Mr. Modi and a referendum on him. How bright is his star? Has his star been tarnished a little bit? Do people like and approve of what he's doing? That star has diminished a bit. We'll see how much. Secondly, it's about unemployment. This is one of the biggest issues in India today. A lot of people, 3/4 of the adult population, is saying they're worried about job possibilities and potential in the future. And thirdly, it is about national security. We had this incident up in Kashmir about a month ago, and how will Mr. Modi come through on this? Is he going to be a strong, vibrant leader, not giving an inch of territory to an opposition country, or can the opposition, Mr. Gandhi in this instance in the election, show that he's vulnerable on national security?
So, you know, obviously in the United States, voter turnout is always a key concern. In 2016, we did see sort of a record number of Americans turning out to vote in the presidential election, some 60%. The midterms also saw a really sharp increase from previous midterms, about 49%. What is the voter turnout in the world's largest democracy, 1 billion people? I wonder what the numbers look like there.
Well, yeah, not only are the numbers 3 times the entire population of America at about 300 million people to 900 million eligible voters in India, it is roughly about, depending on the election and the excitement, the vibrancy of it, it can go from anywhere from 60 to 70% turnout. I can tell you, having lived in India, there are stories and people I've talked to there where a grandmother will say to their grandson, I have so much pride in this democracy. I value my vote so much. I need you to carry me to the polling place today. How many of us in America can say we've carried a relative to the polling place literally on our back to fulfill the mandate of voter turnout?
Yeah, that is very, very remarkable. Let me ask you about a major issue that's been playing out around this election, and it's surrounding a controversial citizenship bill. It sparked protests across the country, as you know. Walk our viewers through what's at issue here and explain how those protests can impact this election.
Well, it's the Citizenship Act, and certainly citizenship in India by the Constitution is something sacred to them, and the definition of that. There's a bill that has been talked about and passed in the lower Lok Sabha, the lower parliament, that talks about extending citizenship to new migrants, people that can get to India from other countries or have already been there for years, and establish reasons for their being in India, religious persecution, if they can prove that. As in any democracy and around the world today, migration issues are hot-button issues, and they are galvanizing both the left and the right, particularly in places like India. India was born of fire of this partition between Pakistan and India, so this is a very volatile issue in India, especially right on the cusp of an election.
So those there's a lot of other things on the ballot. Voters are also going to be choosing who's going to represent them in the lower house of parliament. So What are some of the key parliamentary races to watch? And I guess what are the issues that are driving voters to this historic election?
Well, certainly people think in India, just like they do in America, we have a problem in the United States on this. Many Indians feel that the government is corrupt, that politicians and business leaders are corrupt in India. So corruption continues to be a big issue, as it is in the United States with special interest groups and politicians going to jail due to taking bribes, and certainly around the Mueller scandal in America, we're seeing people around the president being indicted and convicted. So that's a big issue in India. Certainly farmers and getting their fair share, making sure that they can pass on their farms to their sons and their families and daughters. That's a big issue. Suicide rates in India have been something that have got on the radar screen. And finally, a big issue in the lower parliament is, coalition governments. What kinds of coalitions can the BJP party, the governing party right now, or the Congress party, the opposition party, how can they form bridges to smaller parties in different states throughout India to strengthen their opportunity and ability to appeal to more voters? These are going to be key issues for turnout and for who wins, probably in a closer election than 2014.
Real quick before I let you go, Mr. Ambassador, I've always been fascinated by Kashmir and the things that have happened there over the last several decades. The current Prime Minister Modi, who's running for re-election, and his party have they've long talked about ending Kashmir's autonomous status. That's something that he's also mentioned throughout his campaign to win this election. What is Gandhi saying about Kashmir?
Well, certainly with the attack on Indian troops back on Valentine's Day, back in mid-February, when more than 40 Indian troops were killed by Jaish-e-Mohammed, a terrorist group that came out of Pakistan, this has been a very volatile issue. Mr. Modi struck back, going across Kashmir into Pakistan territory with fighter jets for the first time since 1971, showing strength. Mr. Gandhi has come back and said, well, you may have shown some strength there, but we lost an airplane, a fighter jet, when it went over, and he tried to say it was not effective enough. So they're both fighting over who's tougher on national security and who's more effective and who could be more effective in the future. Certainly, one of the key questions here is, after the election is over, how effective is the governing party, whoever wins, going to be? How can they work effectively in the lower house, the Lok Sabha, and the upper house, the Raj Sabha, to get legislation through, especially if it's a tight election and you have to form a coalition government? You don't have an outright majority like Mr. Modi did in 2014. That's a key question.
All right. A really, really fascinating and a great discussion. Ambassador Tim Roemer, thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you again. Thank you for having me.